You're 19 years old, and the world is screaming. The rotor wash slams into your face, hot air and red dust swirling around the cockpit like a storm that wants to swallow you whole. The intercom crackles, someone yelling coordinates, but it's all drowned beneath the roar of the engine. Your hands are slick on the cyclic. You squeeze harder, pretending the shaking is from the machine and not from you. The jungle below flashes with gunfire, tiny orange mouths spitting light. Tracers stitch the air in long, hateful lines. You drop lower. The radio is alive with half sentences and panic, but there's no time to think. The only thing that matters is keeping the Huey level long enough to touch down, unload, and get out before the next burst finds your tail. You can smell the burned oil, the cordite, the sweat of 12 soldiers in the back who trust you with everything. You're 19, and you've never even paid taxes. Yet here you are, flying into hell like it's a shift you signed up for. A year ago, the loudest thing in your life was the rumble of a pickup on a Friday night. You had friends, a girl, plans that felt endless, college maybe, or working with your dad at the garage. The draft notice came folded and polite. Greetings from the President of the United States. Your mom cried at the kitchen sink. You stared at the envelope, pretending to be proud, pretending not to be scared. At the induction center, they handed you forms and tests. When the results came back, a sergeant grinned. You scored high enough for flight school, kid. Ever wanted to fly? You said yes before thinking. Flying sounded clean, almost noble. You pictured blue skies, not jungles. You didn't know that the same engines lifting you would later drown out the sound of your own heartbeat. Fort Walters, Texas. 1,000 degrees in the sun, and an instructor who chewed gum louder than the rotors. The first day, you learned how a helicopter shouldn't stay in the air at all, that it was a controlled accident from start to finish. You learned the language of lift and drag, of pitch and torque. You learned to trust instruments more than instincts. Every night you lay on your bunk, replaying lessons in your head. What happens if the engine dies? What happens if the tail rotor fails? The first solo flight came after weeks of sweat and humiliation. You lifted off, expecting disaster. But the sky didn't collapse. It opened. The world shrank beneath you, perfect and bright, and for the first time you felt weightless. The instructor clapped your shoulder when you landed. Enjoy it, rookie. Next stop, Southeast Asia. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You laughed anyway, because laughter was easier than admitting what that meant. Vietnam hits you first through smell, jet fuel, mud, and rot. Ton Son Nut Airfield looks like someone built it out of chaos and sweat. Hueys line the tarmac in rows that shimmer in the heat. Men move everywhere, young and sunburned, their uniforms already the color of dust. An older pilot, Captain Mason, meets you by the revetments. He's 26 and looks 50. Welcome to the 173rd, kid, he says, handing you a canteen that tastes like metal. Hope you paid attention in auto-rotation class. The first night you lie on your cot listening to the endless whine of engines. Somewhere in the distance, mortars thump. You think of home, of quiet streets and neon signs, and realize you'll never hear silence the same way again. Morning comes with orders, your name on the board, flight crew assigned, the same machine you trained on, now armed, patched, and real. You walk across the flight line, helmet under your arm, and the thought lands heavy. You're not practicing anymore. The rotors spin up. The vibration runs through your boots, into your bones. The crew chief gives a thumbs up. The skids lift. For a brief, impossible moment, you forget the fear and feel the pull of the sky, the strange peace before the chaos. You're 19, and you're officially at war. The first time you take fire, it doesn't look real. Tiny sparks flash in the tree line like someone striking matches in the dark. Then the sound hits, sharp, metallic, angry. You realize it's not sound at all, but metal tearing past you. The crew chief yells over the intercom, "Taking rounds! Left side!" The door gunner opens up with his M60, the vibration shaking the whole airframe. You can't hear him scream, but you can see his mouth wide open behind the visor. Every instinct says, "Pull up, get out." But the radio's alive with voices on the ground. The LZ is hot, troops waiting for drop-off. You push the nose forward and keep descending. The jungle rises fast, the treetops whipping past so close you could touch them. The moment you hit the ground, soldiers pour out. The door gunners keep firing as the co-pilot yells, "We're clear! Go! Go!" You yank on the collective, lift off hard. Bullets slap the fuselage like hail on metal. When you land back at base, your legs refuse to move. The chief runs a hand over the side panel and counts the holes. 14, he mutters. 14 in your first mission. You stare at the holes and think, that could have been 14 times I died. Days blur. Nights barely exist. You wake up to the same smell, fuel, sweat, and mud. Breakfast is instant coffee and nerves. Briefings are short. Insert here, extract there. Each mission is a gamble. You fly low to avoid radar, skimming the treetops, trusting the man in the left seat and the two in back. You start to recognize the sound of each weapon, the hollow thud of mortars, the sharp bark of AKs, the gut-deep whoomp of your own rockets. After a few weeks, fear changes shape. It doesn't go away. It just becomes background noise, like the whine of the engine. You start judging missions by odds, how hot the LZ is, how bad the weather looks. Sometimes you joke on the way out. Tex, your co-pilot, keeps a tiny photo of his wife taped above the altimeter. "She thinks I'm flying cargo," he says, grinning. Technically, that's true. Jonesy, one of your door gunners, chews gum like it's the only thing keeping him alive. "Hey, rookie," he shouts over the rotors one morning. "You keep us level, I'll keep us alive." You nod, pretending it's funny. But you know he means it. Mid-July. You're running medevac runs south of Pleiku. The radio call comes in. Dust-off required. Multiple wounded. Hot LZ. You bank hard and head for the coordinates. Smoke grenades bloom below. Red for enemy, yellow for friendlies. The field is chaos. Tracer fire cutting through the haze. You can see flashes of movement, medics waving. The descent feels endless. The helicopter trembles under the strain. As you touch down, the crew chief jumps out, helping drag bodies aboard. Some are conscious, some not. One man grabs your sleeve, his eyes wild. "Don't leave them," he shouts. You nod, even though you can't promise anything. A mortar lands close, too close. Dirt sprays across the windshield. The co-pilot screams, "Power up! You pull!" The Huey groans, and for a second, you think it won't lift. Then you're airborne, climbing, shaking, carrying more weight than you should. On the way back, the medic in the back works frantically, shouting for bandages. One soldier's chest rises and falls in short, broken gasps. He doesn't make it. The crew chief pulls a blanket over him. Nobody says a word. The radio hums softly. You stare at the horizon, the sun bleeding into the clouds, and wonder how many more flights like this you can survive. The Huey becomes your home, your armor, your heartbeat. You start to know every sound it makes, when the transmission whines too high, when the blades need tightening. Red, the other gunner, talks to the bird like it's alive. "Come on, girl," he says before takeoff. "Keep us safe today." You laugh, but deep down, you believe it too. After every mission, you and the crew patch the holes with tape and paint, wipe off the soot, and get ready for the next run. The machine keeps flying, no matter how damaged. So do you. You and Tex develop a language of glances. You know when he's about to bank left or drop altitude. The gunners know your rhythm, how you like your approach, how you hover just above the trees before committing to a landing. One night, after 12 straight hours of missions, the four of you sit on ammo crates outside the revetment. Jonesy passes a cigarette around. "You ever think about home?" he asks. "Every time we take off," Tex answers. You stare at the Huey, its skin patched and scarred under the floodlights. You realize it looks like all of you, held together by willpower and habit. Somewhere beyond the runway, thunder rolls. For a second, you mistake it for artillery. You laugh, but no one else does. It happens on a clear morning, the kind pilots pray for. The sky over the Central Highlands is bright, the kind of blue that looks harmless. You're ferrying ammo to an outpost when the warning light flares red. The engine coughs once, twice, then dies. "Engine failure!" Tex shouts. There's no time to think. Training takes over. You drop the collective, nose down, trying to keep the rotor speed alive. Trees rush up to meet you, green and violent. The helicopter slams into the clearing hard enough to knock the wind from your chest. Everything goes quiet except the ticking of cooling metal. The smell of burning oil fills the cabin. "Everyone alive?" You croak into the intercom. A cough, a grunt, a curse. Miraculously, yes. Jonesy's arm is bleeding, but he's smiling through it. "Guess the old girl didn't like that last hill." You grab your rifle, check the tree line. You can hear distant gunfire. You know the sound of AKs by now. Close, maybe half a mile. For 2 hours you wait for rescue, crouched behind the crippled Huey. Every rustle in the jungle makes your heart trip. When the rescue chopper finally thunders overhead, you feel something strange. Relief mixed with guilt. You lived. Too many others didn't. That night, back at base, Tex slaps you on the shoulder. "Hell of a landing, kid. They'll write that one in the manual." You force a grin. But later, lying in your bunk, you can't stop seeing the trees coming up at you. Closer, closer, closer. You start shaking before missions now. Not a lot. Just enough that you hide your hands in your pockets so no one sees. Coffee doesn't help. Neither does pretending. Some nights, you wake to the sound of rotors that aren't there. You swear you can feel the vibration in your chest, even after the generators shut down. You've lost 3 pilots in 2 weeks. One took a round through the windshield. Another clipped a tree trying to pull out too fast. The third simply didn't come back. Everyone stops asking who. They just ask when. The fear isn't sharp anymore. It's dull, heavy, always there. You smoke too much. You stop writing home because you can't find the words to explain any of it. How do you tell your parents that you're not sure which version of you they'd recognize if you came back? Tex still jokes, still draws crude cartoons on the mission board. The door gunners still bet cigarettes on who'll hit the most targets. You all pretend it's normal because pretending is the only way to keep flying. One afternoon, the chaplain visits the revetment. He asks how you're holding up. You tell him you're fine. He nods like he doesn't believe you. You don't blame him. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of the men you fly for. Infantry in the mud, exhausted. Faces streaked with grime. You hover just long enough to see the relief in their eyes when they hear your rotors. They call you angels over the radio. You don't feel like one. You just do your job. But when you drop them off or pull them out, you see what that sound means. Hope. A heartbeat in the chaos. One day, you land for extraction under fire. A soldier grabs your wrist as you lift him aboard, shouting over the noise, "Didn't think you'd come." You yell back, "We always come," though you're not sure how true that is anymore. Later, over the radio, another pilot's voice crackles through static. "Hell of a pickup out there. Buy you a beer if we make it home." The promise hangs there, fragile and human, as the rotors beat time over a burning horizon. You don't realize it yet, but that sound, the rhythmic chop of blades, will stay with you long after the war ends. It'll follow you into sleep, into silence, into every moment when the world goes too still. You make it home in one piece. 19 when you left. 20 when you step off the plane. Everyone says you look older. Maybe it's the way you stand, or the way your eyes keep scanning for threats that aren't there. Home feels quieter than it should. The fridge hums. The clock ticks. Somewhere down the street, a car backfires and your body hits the floor before your mind catches up. You try to sleep without the sound of engines. You fail. Some nights you dream of spinning rotors, others of silence. Both wake you gasping. You visit the hangar once, months later. A museum Huey sits there, clean, polished, too perfect. You run a hand along its side and feel the ghost of vibration under your palm. You think of Tex, Red, Jonesy. You wonder where they are, if they made it, if they can sleep any better than you. People call you a hero sometimes. You nod, but the word feels too big and too small all at once. You didn't feel brave then. You don't feel brave now. You just flew because someone had to. Outside, the wind picks up, rustling through the trees like distant blades. You close your eyes and hear it again. The heartbeat of a machine, the sound that meant life and death. You're 19 years old, hands on the stick, heart in your throat. Every landing could be your last. But you fly anyway.